trees that have like thin leaves can't really handle the cold weather, because if it doesn't shed off its leaves, what ends up happening is that it would collect moisture, it would freeze, and it would add weight to the tree, and that could cause physical harm to the tree, like the extra weight that is frozen on the leaves. And then when the wind blows, there's extra weight on the tree, which will cause perhaps a branch or the tree to break. Now, for some reason, this made me ponder upon the 4 seasons of the year. Perhaps our lives go through the cycles just like nature. And if my actions aren't aligned with the current season, it can cause resistance. Now, for instance, if it is wintertime and I dress like I'm in the summer, I'm going to suffer from the consequences for not being adapted to the current season. Now, before I begin the research, my theory was this: nature goes through seasons and changes. And to think that I don't, or I'm not affected by the seasons, kind of seem out of touch in a way. Because nature is such a massive force that changes everything throughout the season. And it never dawned upon me that, hey, maybe I also change throughout the season. Not just physically, but mentally and internally. Maybe something happens there. And that brings me to today's episode of The Fine Roots, and that is to explore some of the things that happens throughout the season. And one of the things that I found that I wanted to explore was trees. How does a tree go throughout the seasons? Like, what are the things that affects it? Now, before I started on this journey, I wanted to answer these questions. Why do leaves fall off the tree? And then the second question is, what happens to a tree throughout the season? And the third one, I wanted to leave it open to see if there was any other questions that came up during the research. Number 1, why do leaves fall off the tree? Now, before I started to research on this, I always believed this, that in the summertime, there are leaves to provide shade for the tree. That way it doesn't dry up the ground, to kind of protect the moisture that is in the ground. And in the fall, the leaves will fall and kind of keep the ground warm in preparation for winter. And in winter, since there's a layer on top, underneath the tree can begin to absorb all the nutrient in the ground in preparation for the spring. Now, that was my theory, but what I revealed from this research was a little bit off, but it also blew up. Okay, so this is what happens during the autumn of a tree. And this was an article written by Britannica.com. The leaves of the tree will shed before winter in order to protect itself. Now, some trees thrive in the winter because they have like this thick, waxy coating and resin on their leaves to prevent it from freezing and breaking. But trees that have like thin leaves can't really handle the cold weather, because if it doesn't shed off its leaves, what ends up happening is that it would collect moisture, it would freeze, and it would add weight to the tree, and that could cause physical harm to the tree, like the extra weight that is frozen on the leaves. And then when the wind blows, there's extra weight on the tree, which will cause perhaps a branch or the tree to break. Now, the tree does this in a controlled process. So there's like a whole chemical reaction that happens. It prepares for each season before it happens. Now, in the wintertime, the tree will release a hormone, and it will activate a process called the abscission process. And this is the process where chlorophyll, which is the chemical which makes the leaf green, it will stop that production and it will begin to fade away, which begins to reveal the other chemicals that are in the leaves that will make it red and yellow. Now the vessel that carries the water and the sugar to the leaves begins to cut off, and a small layer of cells begins to form, known as the abscission layer, and it begins to grow between the leaf and the twig of the tree, and in preparation to break off the leaf. So it kind of cements the kind of forms a layer of cement, you could say, between the leaf and the branch or the twigs, and then it kind of cuts off the circulation, and then when wind comes it kind of blows, it gives a little shake for the leaf to be cut off. So it intentionally breaks off its leaf through the abscission process, and in the abscission process it forms the layer, which is called the abscission layer. And the reason why it breaks off the leaf is it's kind of like it's sealing off its branches. That way it doesn't leave the tree open to wounds. And once the leaves are gone, that tree will go through dormancy, which is kind of like its energy saving mode for the springtime. Now, for the leaves that have been broken off, that is left on the ground, is left to decompose by the insect. And the byproduct of the insect is going to be left on the ground for the springtime for the tree to use. Now, if this isn't a magic or a miracle of nature, then I don't know. This is like nature built in a recycle feature into the entire thing. But it gets better. So we know why the leaves fall off the tree. Now I needed to know why leaves in the first place. And earlier I touched upon the substance called chlorophyll, which is the green color of the leaves. And chlorophyll is actually what the tree uses to trap sun rays, which is like the energy from the sun. And in doing so, in trapping the sun rays, it will begin a process called photosynthesis, which a lot of people are familiar with. But in combination of trapping the sun rays, it will combine with water and soil and carbon dioxide gas from the air. It will produce sugar for the tree. And in return, it will release oxygen back into the air. So, if this isn't magical, then I don't know what is. This is so poetic that I am lost for words. Okay, so let's do a recap, right? Today was a day where it was still. And in still days, it is easy to reflect on life. And I began to reflect on my life. And I started reflecting on my life, and what it revealed was the life of life. And quick recap of how the tree works throughout the seasons, right? So the leaves of the tree has a chemical called chlorophyll, and that is what makes the leaf green. And the green color of the leaves on the tree will trap the sun's energy, and it will combine with water and the soil and carbon dioxide from the air, and it will produce sugar, which is the food for the tree. So it will take some and it will give back some, which is the oxygen. So it takes something from the air and it'll give back something to the air. And now it produces the sugar and the leaves, right? And then so that is the summertime. And now comes the fall. So before the leaves fall off, it will begin a process known as the abscission process, which is where the leaf and the twigs or the branches begins to cut off the circulation. And to cut off the circulation, it has to form like a small layer known as the abscission layer. And the reason why it cuts off the layer is because it doesn't want moisture to be attached to the leaves, because when it goes into wintertime, there's a lot of wind which could cause it to physically harm the tree, so it doesn't do that. So it has to cut off the leaves in order to survive the winter. And in order to do that, it forms a small layer to kind of cut off, to seal up the branches, to put it a better way. And then the wind will kind of break off the leaf. And the reason why it turned yellow and red is because upon cutting off the circulation, chlorophyll stops, which is the color green of the leaf. So when the green stops, the red and the yellow, which is underneath, begin to show. So fall happens, right? The leaves will fall down on the ground, the insect will eat it, and the byproduct of the insect is going to be the food for the tree. So the tree gives food for the insect will give back food for the tree. This is bonkers. This is life at its purest form. You take and you give. How is this not poetic? This is related to our life. We take some, we give some. To give, we take. And to take, we must give. Because we can't just take. What ends up happening is that we'll take it. We'll literally take ourselves with us. But when we give something, we'll get something. But if you take something, you'll take it. And in return, other people will take that. So this is a crazy journey that revealed itself because I wanted to reflect on my life on a still day. And on this still day, what revealed itself was life. I can't get over this, but okay. So this is a beautiful process. Life is beautiful. And if you made it this far into the podcast, you are beautiful. And again, I'd like to thank you for being here, for spending your time and energy with the Fine Roots podcast. And I wish you with the greatest journey ahead, filled with joy and love. And remember, when we take, we give. When we give, we'll take. That is the poetry of life. I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.